So you were kind of this like free floating like mercenary unit that was thrown in between a bunch of different corporate shell companies. And the way that I remember you describing your job to me one time is that you were like a decoder. Like you would go in and remove extraneous code from various systems that were clogging up the works.
That was honestly a valuable part of what I did in a lot of cases. Because I can sort of talk about the complexity of modern tech stacks and things, but there is sort of an assumption that writing more code is always useful. And a lot of times, just deleting old code is really valuable. Because like whenever you hear about like, oh, there was this security vulnerability, there was some code that, hackers were able to exploit to get some information. If you deleted that code, hackers couldn't exploit it. And
as opposed to implementing a brand new security protocol on top of the exploitable code or something.
Yeah, the more layers you add on top of stuff, it's impossible to understand the increasingly complex interactions between all of those things. And eventually you forget some old thing that was written in the startup days when everybody was just working through the night, caffeine-fueled, and there were only 3 employees and there were no standards on anything. And it was just a couple of grad students and nobody knew how anything works, when all of that old stuff still exists in this complex stack and you build layers and layers and layers on top of it. Then you wind up with this, we have this totally new system. It does all of these amazing things. And then under the hood, it's still this janky old code from 10 or 20 or 30 years ago.
Is this a phenomenon? This occurs to me as like a phenomenon of capitalism that like it makes people nervous to state what you just stated, that we actually would be more efficient by removing this code rather than hiring a bunch of engineers and building a whole bunch of new things. Because presumably most people feel like they've been hired to produce code.
Code is presumed to be an asset at every corporation I have ever worked at or with or had friends working at, because it is a thing you pay people to create. So it logically fits into this concept of asset. If you are a company that makes chairs and you pay people to make chairs, you're like, oh, great, we've got all of these chairs. That is an asset that we can sell. When we go to get a bank loan, we can say we have a warehouse full of 1 million chairs, and the bank will be like, okay, so worst case scenario, that is an asset that is on the balance sheet. In reality, I think code should always be understood as a liability on your balance sheet, not an asset.
Wow.
And almost nobody agrees with me.
No, engineers would be very mad at you for saying that.
A lot of engineers would appreciate it. All the bean counters would be like, why did we spend all of this money paying people to create something that is a negative value? But it is something that has to be maintained. It is something that has to be understood. It is something that you have to pay for servers to run all that old code. The less code you have, running at any moment, the fewer servers and the lower your operational costs, because if you are only running the code you really need to run, that's a lot cheaper to operate than running 10 times that much code for no reason.
So to use the previous analogy, you're the guy that walks into the chair warehouse and finds all of the basically booby-trapped chairs that weren't put together well, and you take them apart and you throw them into the fireplace, and you go, look, I've saved you all this money on liability suits.
Yeah, that I think, ironically, has been one of the most valuable parts of my career, is all the code that I was just like, I'm going to delete this. I don't think we need this anymore.